Poor lawyers work with mob leaders to get vital evidence. The story begins a week ago with young Lee Won, a Korean-American lawyer. But he runs to work every day to save on bus fare. He now lives with the old woman who took care of him when he first arrived in Russia. He was thinking that he would hurry up and finish the task of the local client, and then return home as soon as possible. Because he was thinking about things, he didn't notice someone around the corner. He bumped into the strong muscle of the strong man in front of him, and the pain caused him to step back 5 meters. Just when he thought he was going to fall, the blonde man grabbed him around the waist. The mouth of the man's evil charm raised and asked him if he was okay. Lee blushed with embarrassment and said nothing. He felt the man's hand cling to his waist. He reminded the man that he could put him down. Lee then immediately stepped back 10 meters to apologize to Lee. The man stared at Lee. He said he wasn't hurt. Then the man suddenly looked down and told him he'd better wear sunglasses. The man said that it often snowed here, and the ultraviolet light was very strong, which was bad for the eyes. Lee said he had to go first. The scene turns to a shaven-headed congressman complaining about the Mafia's incompetence. The man put out his cigarette gracefully and said, "I'm not here to listen to your complaints." While they were negotiating, Lee burst in. The man he saw was the man he met last time. He's here to deal with the congressman's seizure of his client's factory. The bald councilman lost 2 hairs when he did it. He felt the man watching him all the time. He's trying to figure out what's the relationship between this guy and the congressman. He tried to hand over his business card, and the man's assistant followed suit. The man said his name was Caesar. Then Lee left, and there was silence. The bald congressman's opponent, Lee, gave him a hard time with the paper. The bald congressman sent the man to deal with the lawyer. At this point, Lee and the client negotiate what to do next. His client told him that the person on the card was at least a mafia boss. Lee decided to find out who the man was first. Caesar here receives a gift from the senator. Caesar said he did not like anyone to pry into his tastes. The assistant indicated that he would be more careful next time. Suddenly, Lee barges into Caesar's office, surrounded by 80 men. The scene stunned everyone. Lee tries to talk to Caesar, but Caesar says he doesn't remember him. Listen to Lee. Can't remember me. Then let you remember me more deeply. He suddenly grabbed the pen on the table. That's pretty impressive. Then Lee stuck the pen in the chair and said, "You're impressed with me. I have a suggestion. You can kiss him. It'll be more impressive." Then Lee quickly said that there was some information here, and that he wanted Caesar to think seriously about whether to help the senator and give him an answer in 3 days. Caesar gives his assistant 5 minutes to find out everything he knows about this man, including the color of his underwear. Then he came to see someone. He came here to rest. Dmitri, 20, Caesar's cousin, Stilto, a former KGB, owner of the club. Then Caesar's cousin assigned 10 men to put Caesar to sleep. It took him 7 years to finally find a lead on one man. His mother told him to find someone before she died 7 years ago. He asked the family about a woman who had stayed there 30 years earlier. The old man said he only remembered one person, but did not remember anything specific. Lee returns home frustrated and receives an invitation from Caesar. Caesar elegantly advises Lee to wait until the show. Lee watched the wonderful ballet carefully. He thought he wouldn't come, but it was a great show. Suddenly Caesar says give him an answer now. This approach to the speech frightened Lee into taking off in place. Caesar says he will not give in to threats. Lee listens to him in disbelief, and Caesar gently smooths Lee's hair around his ear. Then Caesar invites him to dinner. "I just want to get home from work early," Lee thought. Caesar smiles as Lee leaves angrily. What they don't know is that someone else is watching. The next day, Lee woke up to the sound of a struggle in his home. A bunch of guys are picking on his old landlady. He went up to stop it, and he got hit. He saw his client Nikolai unconscious. Then the group warned him to stay out of the senator's business. He angrily uses his 18-meter leg to give the group a bit of color to their chins. He watches the landlady grieve as her dead husband's belongings crumble, and he decides to ask Caesar for an account. He threatens Caesar's secretary in Caesar's office. He tells Caesar that even if you're the leader of the Mafia, you should not use violence against innocent people. Lee said he would fight the fight to the end. Caesar wonders what he did with the violence, wondering if Lee had woken up and had a bad dream. An emotional Lee thought he was arguing and angrily picked up the freshly brewed hot tea on the table. Lee is then held down on the couch by Caesar. Lee says all you do is threaten people. Caesar asked if Lee had been drinking and not showering last night. Caesar approaches Lee and says, "That's your smell?" Ow! Oh my God. He likes the smell of drunk, unwashed sweat? I don't understand, but I respect it. Caesar says that to punish Lee for insulting people without evidence, he reaches out to see if Lee is thinking with his thigh muscles. Then he had to check Lee's pectoral muscles. Watching this scene, I let out a barbell laugh. 2 hours later, before leaving Caesar's office, Lee says he will return with evidence, but he hasn't found evidence of the congressman's guilt before the trial. At this point, Caesar finds him, and Caesar says to go out to dinner with him and give Lee the evidence. Lee agrees to have dinner with Caesar, and Caesar talks to him for 2 hours about how a rooster makes eggs, right? Just when Lee was about to get angry and impatient, Caesar takes out the evidence envelope. Caesar said to kiss me if he wanted the envelope. The next moment, Caesar's tie is seized by Lee's hand. And the good news is, let me do it. I can kiss 18 hot guys on my own. Lee then pushes Caesar's shoulder away. Lee said, I already got it. And then he walks out of the scene without looking back. Caesar is left to revel in what has just happened. Soon after, Lee presented his client with evidence of the congressman's guilt, and the case gained momentum. But he still needs crucial evidence to bring down the senator. Caesar then deliberately appears in front of Lee. He tells his client to go home, and Lee decides to go to Caesar to get more evidence. Caesar says to Lee, "You look tired. Isn't that nonsense? Whoever goes to work is tired." Caesar quietly gave Lee a note. Caesar tells him to think about getting what he wants, and then call him. Lee had barely gotten out of the car when he received a message from his client. A group of people claimed that the government had asked them to expropriate the factory. The men said they were doing paperwork according to the above. Knowing that he could not fight the crowd alone, Lee decided to call Caesar. The next day, he came to Caesar's house. Lee follows Caesar's tip that he suspects the dead former mayor of an improper deal with the councilman, which, if true, will lead to an estate dispute trial by revealing the councilman's corruption, believing that he can win the trial and bring down the councilman. Caesar stated that he had sent the required documents to his room and invited Lee to come with him to his room. Lee said, "You should send the information to my house." Caesar said your room was so small, you had to sleep in the hallway. Lee then stayed behind to sort through the material. He found himself late for the last bus. He opens the door and hits Caesar in the heart. Lee thinks Caesar's pecs are soft. Somebody tell me if a man's pecs are hard or soft. How should Lee face this situation? If you like this video, can you like and follow me? Thank you.